First, the good news. Ontario's booking system for vaccinations came online this week. But the bad news. Due to growth in the variants of concern, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer David Williams has declared that the province is officially in a third wave. With us to better understand where we're at and where we're headed, in the nation's capital, Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist and associate professor at the University of Ottawa's Faculty of Health Sciences. And here in the provincial capital, Ashley Chute, infectious disease epidemiologist at the University of Toronto's Dalla Lana School of Public Health. Hi, welcome back to you both.
Hi.
Hi. My voice sounds a little bit off. I lost it from yelling at my children. No, I was communicating, not yelling. But happy to have you here. We have a lot to get into in the next 25 or so minutes. Raywat, so on Thursday, Dr. Williams announced that the province is officially in a third wave. What does that mean?
Well, it means that we're in the third, hopefully final surge of this pandemic. The numbers are rising, they're mounting fast, and it looks like our ICUs will be quite stressed very soon. This time around, I don't know if the mortality rate will be as high because we have vaccinated most of our long-term care and retirement home residents, but the focus of the disease is shifting to the younger demographic rather, from those between 40 and 79. And the new variants appear to be as lethal in that group. So I anticipate some suffering. This is now a health systems crisis as it was a year ago, less of a mortal crisis, but a crisis nonetheless.
I know people are tired. There's a lot of frustration. A lot of families have lost loved ones, and there's been a lot of pain this past year. Dr. Williams said that it is a third wave, but he said, quote, "It is just a matter of what kind of wave it is." If we're in a third wave, why is the type of wave important to identify, Raywat?
A type of wave. Well, I think what he means by that is this going to be one with extraordinary death toll? Is it going to be one with extraordinary ICU usage, or one with just cases mounting? We hope it's the last one. It's unlikely, though. It's likely going to be something with extraordinary ICU usage and possibly considerable death as well. But depending on how we respond, how quickly we respond, and how much we vaccinate ahead of this, we may be able to shorten the wave to something not like the last one, maybe a few weeks rather than months. We'll see what happens, you know?
And Ashley, leading up to the announcement, we've been hearing that there is a possibility of a third wave because of variants of concern. What are these variants and why are they called variants of concern?
So they're called variants of concern because they're basically changes from the original variants that were circulating, and they're concerning. The name sort of tells us what it is. The reason that they're concerning is because they're the virus has changed over time since it's been with us for over a year now. It's acquired mutations or changes to its genetic material, and some of those changes have made it more transmissible. So that means that if a person is infected, they can spread it more easily to other people. And some of these changes have made the variants resistant to vaccines, so they don't respond as well, or you don't mount a strong immune response to the vaccines. And some of them are more lethal. So if you do get infected, you're more likely to die. And so these are, it's sort of part of the natural evolution of any sort of pathogen. But it makes our response over the next couple of months really important because we are dealing with these changed variants of the virus, and our control becomes more challenging.
Would it be safe then to say that this is a different pandemic, or is this just an extension of the same pandemic?
The way that I think about this is that there are really two pandemics happening right now. So we have the pandemic, which was of the original variant, and then underneath we've had this new pandemic, which are these new variants of concern that are more transmissible, that some of which are cause more severe illness. That was happening since we first recognized it in Ontario at the end of December. We started first seeing cases, and it's been sort of happening without us seeing it. We knew that the cases were here, we knew that they were starting to spread, but overall in the province we were seeing declining cases. But underneath that, the cases of variants were increasing. And what we're seeing right now in terms of this increase in cases is the variants have established a foothold. They're transmitting more readily in our population, and that's what's contributing to this resurgence in cases.
You said that we didn't see this. How did we not see this coming?
Um, To be honest, we saw this coming. I mean, we knew that the variants were here. We had surveillance in place, thanks to other countries that have had really good genomic surveillance. We were looking for these variants. I think, when I said we didn't see this, what I meant is, if we look at the epidemic curve, I think we had a false sense of security in January when we saw cases declining. That it's a little bit hard to see these variants establishing their foothold because initially with exponential growth, you start with small numbers of cases, and those can grow really rapidly, and so it's it takes a bit of time for that to become established. But once it becomes established, things can change. The situation can change really rapidly.
One of the way that I guess the government has been communicating the numbers in the province are the daily press, when they release the numbers on a daily basis. But Raywat, those numbers don't really reflect what's happening right now. How come?
There's a lag. There's a lag in reporting, there's a lag in testing. There's also a lag in genomic surveillance. So, by which I mean determining what proportion of our cases are in fact new variants. That takes time. So, there's a full genomic disentangling of the virus to analyze which ones are in fact new variants. And that's a resource intensive process. We have a hand waving method using what's called the S gene failure method. So, the PCR tests target different portions of the genes, and the S gene is the one that the new mutations apparently have a problem with adhering to the PCR. So, long story short, there are different ways of assessing whether or not the variants are present. I'm not a lab guy, I don't fully understand it, but my understanding is it takes time. As a result, any data you see now is probably too old.
So is there a point in doing that, Ashley?
Yeah, there's a number of reasons that we want to do that. First of all, is as I said, we have these parallel epidemics happening. And so even if the data are delayed, we need to understand what's happening. And, as Raywat was describing, there's a fast test that we can do, and then there's a slower test. And so that initial test that we can do to screen for these variants of concern is delayed, but it's, a couple of days. So that information comes to us in a more timely manner. And then it takes a bit longer to do the full genomic workup. But the reason that we want to look for this is because first of all, we need to understand what we're dealing with. And second of all, the genomic epidemiology is really important because the variants that we see right now are not the only variants that we're going to have to deal with. We need to be able to identify new ones that emerge. And the only way that we can do that is via this genomic surveillance.
Before we started taping, and Raywat, I hope I'm not putting you on blast, but you actually said that you thought this pandemic would last 4 years. In the span of a year, we have a vaccine, and we actually have multiple vaccines now from people to choose from in a window of a year. Yet there has been controversy about one vaccine, the AstraZeneca. How come?
A couple of things. One is the reports of blood clots on some European populations, and the other is whether or not this vaccine is relevant for those over 65. So let's deal with the first one first, the blood clotting issue. So apparently we have about 30 cases of severe blood clots, some leading to death, in a population of vaccinated people of about 5 million or 15 million, depending upon which denominator you want to use. That works out to an incidence rate of 0.0006%. Is that a lot? Well, the regular incidence in the general public is like 0.02%. And if you're like on contraceptive medication, if you're a woman who's a childbearing years, the risk is 0.09%. If you're a hospitalized person or taking a flight within 48 hours of a flight, your risk of having this issue is 2 to 10%. So even if there is a causal relationship between the blood clots and the vaccine, and that's not been shown yet, it might just be coincidental, it seems that it's far more likely to experience blood clots if you're not on the vaccine. So I think that's fairly overblown, the risk. And the other issue, of course, is this vaccine relevant for those over 65? Now, the clinical trials that AstraZeneca first submitted didn't enroll a sufficient number of older people for some statisticians to feel confident in computing an efficacy score. That's different from saying it doesn't work. So they're saying we just can't be sure the numbers are right. Since then, we have real life data coming out of places like England and Scotland showing that, yeah, it is quite efficacious amongst those who are older. Therefore, the real life data is always better than the clinical trial data, in my opinion. So it is right for us to use that vaccine in an older population. I think these controversies are understandable, given that this is the most scrutinized vaccine campaign in human history, and that any small bump is going to be amplified by media. Rightfully so, that's media's job. But we have to keep things in proportion. And the proportion here is overall, whatever risk exists is minuscule compared to the potential benefit of getting vaccinated with whatever vaccine that Health Canada has okayed, because they're all comparatively safe and efficacious.
I'm glad that you pointed that out because I think people are very nervous. I think a lot of people's nerves are frayed after this past year. Ashley, when you look around the world, where is the approval process for AstraZeneca globally?
So I mean, the AstraZeneca vaccine is approved, you know, in various countries around the world. I think it's a pretty fluid situation. I mean, the one place where it hasn't been approved yet is the United States, and that's because they have different requirements in terms of the trial data that they're requiring. And I think, it's really important. Raywat was describing the risks that have, these signals that have been coming up in terms of the safety of the vaccine. And I think it's really important, first of all, for everyone to recognize that, that's part of the process of using new vaccines in populations, is that, we need that surveillance. We need people to be looking for those signals because we need to investigate them. We need to understand what's going on. And there are going to be setbacks. It's possible that we will see recommendations change. We may see things that are no longer recommended for certain population groups. But that's really part of what happens as we move from a trial, which is done in a pretty small population group, to starting to vaccinate millions of people. As we are going to start picking up these signals, we are going to potentially have to pivot or change, and again, that's part of science working. And I think it's reassuring that we're finding these signals and we're investigating them and we're responding.
So the AstraZeneca vaccine, is that the one that the U.S. is giving Canada?
Yeah.
But they haven't approved it for Americans.
No, so that I think that's part of the reason that they're giving it, is that they have this vaccine in warehouses, but it hasn't been approved yet.
So how do you get Canadians then, not to interrupt you, sorry, then how do you, if Canadians hear that, then how do you get them to understand that having the vaccine is better than not having it?
I mean, it's complicated. Every country has approved different vaccines, and every country has different processes for approving vaccines. I think at this point, as Raywat was saying, the risks associated with the vaccine are so much lower than the risks associated with getting COVID. And again, I think people need to be reassured that, whenever there are worrying signals, people are investigating this, and that, we've seen this in Europe. They stopped vaccinating with AstraZeneca as soon as they had the signal. They reviewed the evidence, and they, have decided to proceed, making sure that people understand what the risks are. So, in Germany, they now include information for people who are getting vaccinated that there has been this association that they're investigating with clot, and so that you can make an informed decision.
As the Ontario rollout begins to happen, Raywat, one of the suggestions that's been made that maybe would be beneficial to people in the hot zones is that target the hot zones first. Does that make sense?
Before I answer that question, I think it's important to point out that the messaging around vaccines needs to be simplified. It has to be something very basic, like all the vaccines that we've okayed keep you out of the hospital, and they all keep you out of the morgue. And the goal here is to get some immunity into as many people as possible so we go back to normal faster. All right, let's keep it simple. And I think that simple message has been lost somewhere in how we communicate vaccination. We talk about risk, we talk about efficaciousness, we talk about all these other issues. So people are waiting for the better dose months down the line rather than taking what's offered to them now based upon what they see in the media. They all keep you out of the hospital. They all keep you out of the morgue. That's all we should care about. But to answer your question, does it make sense to focus on the hot zones? There are different ways of thinking about vaccine deployment. There's the epidemiological perspective, and what keeps people out of the hospital more, what keeps the epidemic curve less, what gets us faster to herd immunity. Then there's also the equity issue, where people feel this is a fair way of distribution. So disentangling those factors is difficult. I think it does make sense to pour water where the fire is brightest and harshest, to use that metaphor. That's the way we get the emergency under control fastest. But that's only possible if people go along with it. I'm fond of saying that public health is the art of the possible, and what is possible is gated by what people will tolerate. And if you're in a non-hot zone area wondering, Why does Toronto get all the vaccine doses? Toronto gets everything. Why doesn't North Bay get vaccines? I understand, right? And so you have to balance that need for at least the appearance of equity against the need to control the emergency. So that's a complicated, equivocal answer I gave you, but it's a complicated.
Well, I mean, on the flip side, there's been reports that people who don't live in Toronto have been getting vaccines that are supposed to be for people in Toronto because they might be frontline workers, but they don't live in Toronto. They live outside of the GTA. When you do look at the numbers, Ashley, does it make sense to maybe target the hot zones first if we want to get these numbers down?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination. I think it's, we want to protect the most vulnerable, and what predicts the likelihood that you get really sick from COVID or that you die, the most obvious risk factor is age. But look, where you live is also associated with that risk. And so, I think our initial focus was rightly on getting this into long-term care home residents, and getting this into our most elder population. But at this point, I do think that targeting these risk areas, these higher risk areas, it does make a lot of sense. But it needs to be done in a way that makes sure that with any sort of prioritization, it's difficult because we have a scarce resource that everybody wants, and so you have to make sure that you have to make these difficult decisions. But I do think that this idea of recognizing that risk isn't distributed equally across the province, and that making sure that the people who have throughout this pandemic have been at increased risk and have been out doing essential work and putting themselves basically on the front lines should have access to the vaccine.
The U.S., there's been if you are on social media, there seems to be this kind of competition. Well, people in Canada are very envious of what's happening in the U.S. because I think all adults are supposed to be vaccinated by May. I think May or June. And Canada lost its capacity to manufacture its own vaccines decades ago, and we've seen the negative effect of having to rely on other countries. Arewa, what lessons have we learned about vaccine sovereignty through this pandemic?
Oh boy, there's so much to unpack here. We'll be talking about this for years when this is over. So, losing the ability to manufacture vaccines has really crippled our ability, I think, to get sufficient doses into Canadian arms as quickly as we can. And I'm glad that we're focused now on rebuilding that capacity to some large extent. Number one, we're going to need to create boosters. Probably, if not this year, then next year, and possibly the year after that, because as the variants emerge, some will escape our current vaccines. And so we should all line up and get our boosters. And by the way, we will win that arms race because we have a technology to do so. So the ability to produce sufficient boosters for our own country is important. Number two is other pandemics are coming. And the ability to have live vaccine platforms, multiple platforms using mRNA technology, viral vector technology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, increases our species' ability to respond faster and to prevent this level of global emergency. That's the one thing, well, one of many things we've learned from this, is having the ability to pivot quickly and to create new treatments and vaccines and preventatives is essential for our wherewithal and our economy. Pair that with the need to invest in surveillance, global and local disease surveillance, to keep an eye on places where people associate with animals intimately, because that's where these things tend to arise from zoonotic diseases, where diseases jump from animal populations into human populations. We do that to some extent. We can certainly increase our capacity. And now there's a global thirst for this kind of investment. And by the way, it is inexpensive compared to the responses you would need to enact if this gets out of control. So those two things alone, vaccine platforms alive and increased disease surveillance, I think will pay great dividends down the road.
And Ashley, I'd like your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, the ability to manufacture vaccines is going to be increasingly important. We saw what a sort of mistake it was during this pandemic. And the important thing to remember is that it benefits not only us but also the rest of the world. The more places that can quickly scale up and manufacture vaccines means that everybody can have access to vaccines. And we're so focused on what's happening in Ontario and what's happening in the United States, but we need to remember that we have an entire population around the world that we need to vaccinate. And so having more countries with the capacity to manufacture vaccines is going to be critical, as as we navigate this pandemic, as we figure out, what sort of boosters we need in the coming years, and as we prepare for future health threats.
Why should people? Because I think we have maybe part of the media has been doing this a lot. We have the vaccine, our lives can go back to normal. But Ashley, once we do get the vaccines, what should we keep in mind about how this virus operates?
So, I think everybody is so excited about the idea of getting vaccinated and putting this behind us. But I think the one thing that we've learned from this virus is that it's not that predictable. I mean, on the one hand, it is predictable. It was a new virus. Their population didn't have any immunity to it, and it wreaked a lot of havoc. But it also, the variants of concern was something that, on the one hand, you might have predicted, but the speed with which they became an issue, I don't think anybody really anticipated. And so, we hear a lot of talk about this being a race between vaccines and the virus and these variants of concern. But I think it's more a game of strategy where, the virus seems to have this ability to outsmart us, not to anthropomorphize it, but, I think when we have this sense of confidence that, we finally outsmarted it, it changes, it mutates, it has this basically, it's a bit of a race and it's a bit of a game. And so I think we need to think, beyond, the next couple months and think about, how do we make sure that, again, thinking globally, because this isn't going to go away until you know, the entire world is vaccinated, but also think about, how do we monitor for any new variants that emerge? How do we monitor our individual immunity? So how frequently do we need to get boosted for this? And again, looking beyond SARS-CoV-2 and thinking about how do we monitor for future pandemics, because this is not going to be the last one.
We are in a third wave. I want to circle back to the beginning of our conversation. We're in a third wave, but parts of Ontario are reopening. There have been calls for another lockdown, I think up to a month. That's the number that has been suggested. How realistic is that, Raywat, considering the economic challenges that a lot of businesses have experienced and the political will?
I don't see a lot of will for it, to be honest, at least not at the provincial level. I think at certain hot zones, it's going to happen for sure. I think it should happen across the board because that's our best way to stop it quickly. And when we stop it quickly, by the way, it's stopped for good, more or less. I don't anticipate any further economic restrictions after this spring as vaccination rolls out in earnest. But I don't see the political or public will to enact a provincial-wide restriction. So it's going to be a region-by-region affair. Having said that, there are things we can do to make sure that this region-by-region affair is more impactful than it could be otherwise. We can really ramp up our testing and tracing and isolation. And every citizen has it in our power to voluntarily restrict our contacts. That's probably the best way I think that individuals can contribute to this. You don't have to go to the restaurant even though the restaurant's open. You don't have to go to the gym even though it's open. And I feel bad for restaurant owners and gym owners saying that, but we can still minimize our exposures and slow the disease process even though things are open.
But how realistic is it to say that when it's been a year already? And I think there's a lot of people who would say that I've done everything right for the past year. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. I liken this to a movie, and we're in the third act of the action movie. In the third act, you fight the biggest foe. Oftentimes, the biggest foe isn't the fiercest foe. It's just because the hero is too tired, and we are quite tired now. But it is the third act, which means when this is done, things get easier. There are also direct-to-DVD sequels that no one ever watches about how, the government screws up the response later on, and a new variant emerges, and whatever. But the bulk of the crisis will be done soon, I think. And so I think what people have to get in their minds is this is the final thing we're asking you to do at this scale. After this, it's simply a matter of submitting to booster shots and occasional screening tests and so forth. But if we can survive survives is the right word. If we can persevere the next 2-3 months of more hardship, then the sun will come up and it will stay up for a while.
I want to leave on a moment of hope, and even just reflection. Ashley, over the past year, what has made you hopeful about the current predicament that we're in?
I mean, far and away, the vaccines are the good news story here. I remember, a year ago doing some projections in terms of where I thought we were going. And we ran the model for 2 years. And, we're showing, these restrictions in place for 2 years. And I remember having this sense of, people were talking about a vaccine, but I really didn't think it was realistic. And, here we are a year later, we have multiple vaccines. We've gone through a really incredibly difficult year, but, we're at a point now where there is an end in sight, where vaccines really are going to change the game. They've already changed the game in terms of protecting residents in long-term care homes. And, I think, this, as terrible as this pandemic has been, it's also shown how remarkable science is and how it really can step up and help us.
And Ray Watt, same question.
I have two positive takeaways. First is, as Ashley mentioned, the mRNA vaccines in particular have been extraordinary. They are a game changer. We can use these for cancer, for Ebola, for HIV, possibly. All kinds of opportunities are open to us now. In addition, as new variants arise, we will win the arms race because the mRNA vaccines take, 48 hours to create after we've sequenced the genome and 2 to 6 weeks to put into production. That's an enormous advantage in speed of response that the human species now has the advantage in combating a disease like this. The second thing I'm positive about is the thirst for science, literacy, and education. This has been a failure of Western civilization, frankly, the last couple of decades. We've retreated from the desire to learn the hard things. And now people have awoken to the fact that we have a crisis of numeracy and science literacy. And the thirst to re-engage with that process is real. And I'm quite excited to be a part of it.
And looking back on the past year, Ashley, what makes you say, I never saw that coming?
There's a lot I didn't see coming. I think, again, I just said, we ran this out for 2 years. And so I knew that we were going to be in this for the long haul, but actually living through this and like the length of time and how time feels simultaneously really fast and really slow, and sort of the fatigue that everyone feels, you can come up with these sort of models that say, well, we just need to do this for 6 months or for 3 weeks. But the reality of that actually implementing and this sort of lack of political will and political support for some of the hard work that we needed to do was something that, I certainly wouldn't have seen or predicted last January.
And Ray Watt, I'll give you the last minute.
The barrier in responding to this pandemic wasn't resources, it wasn't the virus, it wasn't anything technical. As noted, science gave us vaccines in under a year. The barrier was people, and I was surprised by that. And people presented problems in terms of political will, in terms of active disinformation, in terms of actual threats towards public health officials. It's been saddening to watch how we are our worst enemies, and that means we need to reinvest in civic responsibilities more so than scientific wherewithal. So this has always been a crisis, it turns out, of the human will and the human character. And now we can cogitate upon that truth for the next couple of years and wonder what we did wrong and where can we go better.
And just to wrap up with what Ashley said, we're all in this together. If one of us has this, none of us are safe. As always, I learned so much from both of you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We appreciate you making time for us because I know your schedules are very, very busy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.